On Wednesday, the morning of October 25th, 1967, Annie awoke to prepare the day's meals. She fried chicken for James and herself to take to work for lunch, then prepared grits for the children's breakfast. For their lunch, she made rice and beans, seasoned it with hog jowl gravy, and mixed some of the grits in it to stretch it. She placed it in the refrigerator for Bessie to serve to the children later that day. The Richardsons was out the door by 6:45 a.m. They worked 16 miles from home and headed toward a stop on the corner where a work truck would pick them up. The older children ate their grits for breakfast and headed off to school, and the younger children were home with the neighbor Reese. It was about noon, and the older children had arrived home for lunch. Reese divides the beans and rice amongst the 7 children. The children finished their lunch and walked back to school. Upon returning to school, teachers discovered all 4 of the children were convulsing and vomiting. Teachers notified the nurse, then Principal Lewis Anderson. Principal Anderson and some of the teachers loaded the girls into his vehicle, and he transported them to the hospital. Betty was the only one who could speak at that point, saying, "I'm all right." Trying to comfort her, Principal Anderson responded, "Well, sure you are, Betty Jean." One of the teachers from the school went to the Richardsons' residence to check on the younger children. When she arrived, she found Bessie sitting on the front porch holding James Jr. while he was convulsing. Vanessa and Diane were laid in a fetal position in the front yard screaming and crying in pain, and Doreen was inside the apartment also convulsing and vomiting. The teacher transported all 4 children to the hospital. That afternoon, while eating lunch, the Richardsons were approached by a supervisor who informed them that one of their children was ill and had been rushed to the hospital. So the supervisor offered to drive them to the hospital himself. When the Richardsons arrived, they were informed of the horrific news that 6 of the children had died, but Doreen was still clinging to life. Sadly, Doreen died the next morning.